This is the weekly wrap up presented by the Conversation Project. I am Jay Clifton Payne. The top 10 stories based on your engagement with our Conversation Project feeds on Facebook and Twitter or X. From Friday, December 29th to January the 5th, 2024, 3 to 24, sipping in the new year, getting the full week in and giving you the stories that you said were the tops based on purely what you said, not in the mix we do. Now, we do a daily show, a daily weekday show called Things You Might Have Heard, where we do mix things up based on how the stories flow. These are the exact 10 stories from the week that you said were most engaging. We'll give them to you in just a moment. Plus, we're going to give you some stories for perspective, a quick run through the stories that didn't quite make it, stories 11 through 15. We call them almost rans, and a little bit of perspective on a story that got no love, basically none. We call that the almost relevant story of the week. That's at the very bottom story for this week. This week, that story ranks pretty low. We had a full week of work in because I had a lot of time off, and so that story ranks in all the way down at 224. 224 distinct different links, and we'll tell you about those stories going along the line. Go to our website. This is a conversationproject.com. More details about the Conversation Project all day, all week, what we do all the time, and you can email us at any time you want to at the conversation inbox at gmail.com. As we said, this is the show presented for the week ending January the 6th, 2023. The first week, pretty much full week of the new year and rolling into what should be a great 2024. Some new tweaks to the new show coming here you'll listen to. So make sure that you respond to us, email us what you think about things as we try to do some advancements on the way. Let's get into this news stories because that's what you're here for, to get the actual news. Story number 10, because we come down Casey Kasem style. Headline reads, teen promising career in limbo after he is accused of slapping teammate on the backside. This one came out on Wednesday the 3rd. A teenage swimmer has been in limbo for 20 months, awaiting a decision on an accusation filed against him by the U.S. Center for Safe Sports. Say that 3 times fast. The case involving the alleged butt slapping incident has left the young athlete's career and future uncertain, highlighting the potential issues in the handling of such accusations with sports organizations. The drawn-out process reflects broader concerns about the effectiveness and fairness of safe sport education of procedures. Essentially, just like you do in a basketball game, you pat your guy on the back because he did a great job. One guy pat another swimmer on the back on a teammate, and it turned into literally a case. We'll see this thing playing out essentially eventually, but 20 months is a long time to hold a kid up in his career. Let's move on to story at number 9 this weekend, and it has a headline that reads like this. Conor McGregor says he's returning to International Fight Week to face Michael Chandler. That's his name. Conor McGregor has announced his return to the UFC, set to face Michael Chandler during an International Fight Week bout in June. Notably, this match marks McGregor's first time competing in the middleweight division, a change from his usual weight class. Both fighters have never competed in this division before. UFC has not confirmed the fight, at least they did not confirm it when we posted this on for you to see last Sunday, the 31st. What we do know is that UFC fighters do this a lot. Boxers used to do this a lot of time where they were in a weight class. The weight class was so close, they would kind of float in and out, except for the heavyweights who didn't want to go lower. People who were middleweight and bantamweight, things like that, would essentially want to go up or down to see how they compete against greater talent. This is something that they do a lot in UFC as well, except for usually the heavyweights or the really, really lightweight ones because they can't gain that much weight or can't lose that much weight. We'll see how McGregor is going to do. Whether he's back to make more money, because he's always making money, whether he's back to just get back in the spotlight, because we're not talking enough about him, but he says he's back. We'll see if UFC agrees. The headline at number 8 for this week. Massive earthquake jolts Japan. Residents rush to evacuate. On Monday, the 1st of January, we woke up to what should have been a very boring, slow news day, to breaking news and people trying to figure out how to get people into the studio to cover the earthquake. 7.4 on January the 1st, quake led to insurances of tsunami warnings all day, heightened concern about potential coastal impacts. The event marked a notable seismic occurrence in the region, reflecting Japan's ongoing vulnerability to earthquakes and a need for preparedness and vigilance in the face of natural disasters. One of the odder things about this was it's on the opposite coast that it normally happens. At least the quake came through. So it actually was on the coast where most of the nuclear power plants were, which seemed like an issue for a bit, but they were able to get through that one. Although at 7.4, pretty massive, lots of issues going on. What really became an issue was later on when we heard about the plane crash that happened a few days. There was a lot of things happening in Japan this week. Not a great week to start off for Japan this week. So we send a lot of the thoughts and prayers. We send a lot out to the region for this. At number 7, Jason Whitlock, Katie Nolan feud rehashed after embarrassing ex post. Now, this is a story that got the most numbers, but the Jason Whitlock original post we had was essentially on the fact that Jason Whitlock was watching college football, doing some research, and on ESPN when he noted that he got some ads, some banner ads for, let's just say, questionable sexual content. And he posted it on X with a big screen grab saying, "What's up with ESPN? Show me the stuff during the football game." To which people quickly responded, "It's not ESPN's fault. It's your fault because there are cookies on your machine from your search terms, and that's how the Google knows to tell you stuff." So essentially, you were searching for, highly questionable sexual content, and so you got those ads into your feed, and that's how it works. From the back and forth, somehow Katie Nolan got involved, and it went back to how Jason Whitlock blasted his former Fox. I think they worked together at Fox. The former colleague, wherever they work together. The fact that, basically saying that Katie Nolan got all this attention, not because she was very smart or she knew what she was talking about or was good at sports, but because she looked good. And that came back up there. But the original whole point of this was the fact that Whitlock got some X-rated postings or X-rated ads in his postings and posted about it, to which people called him an idiot. And that's where this all began. Let's move on to the story at number 6 for this week. The headline reads, continuing on the sports theme and continuing on sort of the controversial sports themes, Pat McAfee apologizes after Aaron Rodgers accused Jimmy Kimmel of having Epstein connection on his show. Pat McAfee had to apologize officially, like out there to the world, and say those words out loud because of the words of Aaron Rodgers this week. Aaron Rodgers did a back and forth, and Aaron Rodgers has had sort of a beef with Jimmy Kimmel for a while. Jimmy Kimmel's kind of blasted him on his show, and Aaron Rodgers is a big fan of him. But just sort of, it's the random talk of what's going on. Up went up the talk about the Epstein documents, which were being released this week in bits and pieces. And Rogers said it's going to be great, or I'm paraphrasing, basically going to be great when Jimmy Kimmel's name is on the list, in which Jimmy Kimmel said, "I'm about to sue you folks. It's about to go down." McAfee had to apologize. ESPN had to apologize. And it was questionable whether McAfee was going to be able to continue the Aaron Rodgers spots on his show, especially since people were already sort of kind of cheesed off that they found out he was being paid to do this stuff. After not playing football all year because of an injury, which is odd, he's still showing up and doing his stuff, not because he's really relevant, but because he's a paid spokesperson. So it's a gig. Later on, we found out ESPN weren't not thrilled, not exactly grammatically correct, but they still weren't not thrilled about what Aaron Rodgers said. But as far as they're concerned, he can stay being Rodgers on his show, being McAfee's, for the time being. Let's move on to the story at the 5th spot this week. The headline reads, U.S. Navy helicopter fire at Yemen Houthis rebels and kills several in latest Red Sea shipping attack. The side war going on with the big war, and you can debate whether you want to call it a war or not, the conflict with Israel and Hamas in Palestine, in Gaza, is that the Houthi rebels, call them rebels even though they're basically backed by Iran, are filling their oats and starting to fire off at various things in the Red Sea because, why not? Everybody's fighting. We want to fight too. We want to get some pub too. Helicopters from the Navy fired on 3 ships in the Red Sea this week and killed many members of the Houthis, which happens in what's going on in these things. Right now, the escalation is more or less at a warm-ish level, nothing major, but essentially when you're firing on other folks, you get a chance to defend yourself, and that's what's happening right now. The U.S. is essentially defending carrier ships and cargo ships in the area, keep making sure that things don't go down too bad, but the Houthis are taking responsibility for attacking these ships, so it's there. And the Houthis are, of course, backed by Iran, so it's trying to keep things from being a real U.S.-Iran type thing happening. But with all this going on in the area, everybody's trying to get their licks in. Everybody's trying to get their attention on the causes in there. This is what's happening right now. This is why the de-escalation is a big thing. This is why ceasefires are great when people are actually ceasing fire, but not still doing terrorism against each other. A little bit of extra mix in that one, but I think you get the point. No one wants to go to war, but no one apparently wants to not be a part of this little war that's going on right now. The fourth story for this week by your engagement rankings this week is this headline here. Rocket racing leaks suggest Fortnite game is getting a death race mode. We shall see this happen, but a new game mode called Death Race is reportedly being added to Fortnite's Rocket Racing. This mode is expected to be more challenging than existing Rocket Racing, so maybe there will be deaths and things blowing up to a better degree. Tracks with various deadly obstacles, all sorts of weapons, things like that. It's a leak, so we don't know what exactly this is right now, but we'll find out soon if you're a Fortnite gamer. This is one we saw that was a very high ranking story in the daily show we do when we do for daily looks, but we didn't actually cover this one at all because there are other stories to cover. But this is one that you gamers like, you people on the internet like, you people definitely spiked up at a number 4 ranking for this week. Let's go to a story that's at number 3 for this week and posted on Tuesday the 2nd. All passengers, crew of JLA plane escape blaze at Tokyo's airport. This is more or less a continuation, but a different story from the Japanese earthquake story from earlier in the show and earlier in the week, literally the day before. The next day, a airliner was able to, all the people on a passenger airliner were able to escape a fiery blaze from a crash as the airliner, the larger plane, crashed into a smaller Coast Guard Coast Guard plane that was essentially trying to deal with evacuations and deal with the issues of the earthquake. All 6 members of the crew of the Coast Guard plane unfortunately died, or 5 members of the crew died in the crash. But everyone that was on the jetliner, everyone on the big plane, was able to escape. And it basically touted the way they handle evacuations and escapes in Japan at the airports for these things, for the fact that everyone survived this one so simply, so easily. But this was essentially a second tragic story going on, with the first story being first the earthquake, and then this one. All 379 people that were on the passenger plane were released safely. The 5 members on the Coast Guard ship were not. At number 2 this week, names of Jeffrey Epstein associates and others unsealed in lawsuit document. We briefly talked about this earlier when we talked about Aaron Rodgers, but here's the actual story. And the first headline that I had up here, which I thought would be updated, this link actually was not updated very much, but some individuals that were named, including that popped into this list from here: Bill Clinton, Michael Jackson, David Copperfield, Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, people we already knew that were associated, although some of the salacious details for Bill Clinton were a little more extensive, including the things we probably already heard about Clinton liking younger girls on that end. Michael Jackson was sort of an anomaly, but you're famous folks. David Copperfield was essentially at a dinner with Epstein, saw young girls there, and just sort of asked, do you know what this thing's going on here? And that was it. Nothing, no allegations that anything he did was there. Just he was at a dinner where Epstein was there and there were the young girls there, and he kind of questioned the whole situation. That's how he's in on this one. We asked a poll question this week about whether this thing's going to be a boom and a bust. Essentially right now it's looking like it's not going to be all that salacious. Well, let's take it back. It will be all that salacious, but what we're going to learn from this, it's not going to be anything that's the speculation is going to be outshadowed by. This will be one where the truth is going to be a lot less boring, a lot less interesting than the fiction that we bring about from it. So we're going to see how this one essentially plays out in the wash. We will see more names, more people associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and that does not mean that they've done bad things. That just means they were seen at places where people gave depositions on things like that, including part of the big major story about the fact that Bill Clinton apparently went to Vanity Fair to kill a story, which essentially turned into actually a variation of a story, where the actuality was Jeffrey Epstein kind of showed up and killed the story on Jeffrey Epstein from Vanity Fair. It's an amazing thing going on, and this is the biggest thing going on as we are salacious and want to see details. The problem is the details aren't really all that great, at least not all that salacious. Quick pause, because we're going to give you some stats on this week's story. Number 1, because we do that to give a little hype and also to add a little flair and stretch out the whole show, if you will. This story, right here, got massive amounts of coverage. It's a top story from Facebook and Twitter. All the love from all of it came through. It's actually a combination of stories, so we'll explain that in a moment for why it's so big, but the 2 stories themselves were top stories. This story is, get this, 269% more engaging than the story it did about Jeffrey Epstein. That many more people engaged in this story than that last story. It got 37.48%, almost 40% of all the engagement for all the stories this week, and there were 224 of them. And it's more engaging than the very bottom story that will tell you what it is at the end of the show by 900%. That's a whole lot of numbers. What is the headline for this story, you may ask? I will tell you right now. The headline for this story reads like this: Sugar Bowl flasher offered a lucrative deal from adult site. Now, the original story we posted came up on the 1st, on New Year's Day, as the Sugar Bowl was being aired on ESPN that night. The people in the control room switched to a video, or maybe it was live. Who knows? It probably was live, as all we know, of Bourbon Street, because that's what you do when you're in New Orleans. You go to Bourbon Street. And sometime, somehow, somewhere, especially if it was taped, someone should have caught this. There, a lady, because it's Bourbon Street, it just sort of happens, flashes people on the street, flashes the camera. Boobs are shown on the TV on the national audience. ESPN had to apologize the next day. But here's the kicker. A adult platform found the woman and has reached out to her to offer her 6 figures for showing her talents in an hour-long live feed. Whether she's going to accept this has not been taken up yet, but it's just one of those things. And so it's a story that kept on giving, if you will, for an extra full day. We combined the 2 stories, so that's why it's such a big one. But the 2 by themselves were essentially 1 and 3 already, so it wasn't like it's that big of a deal, except it overshot everything when we put the 2 together, because doing the 2 stories in that case did not make any sense. They were the same story, an extension of the story. So the number 1 story for this week, the headline: Sugar Bowl flasher offered a lucrative deal from adult site. We don't know whether she'll take it or not. We don't judge right here. This lineup here gives a chance to give us the top 10 stories per your engagement. And from that, we pick one story that we expand on because we're assuming you're asking for it, and gives me the chance to kind of do some more serious commentary and more serious work on that. And we got out the story of the week. It's a separate podcast and separate feed. For this week, the story of the week is, whoa, okay. Oh, if you're watching the video, you saw the rest. I didn't pull out last week's number 1 story, so that's there. So if you're listen to audio, no big deal. Otherwise, just ignore that story. That was from 2 weeks ago. But right now, the story of the week, getting back on track, is going to be on Pat McAfee, as Pat McAfee apologized for Aaron Rodgers accusing Jimmy Kimmel of having Epstein connections on his show. This is number 6 story this week, and the angle we're taking for this story is a very simple one. It's very easy to get into. Why do we listen to famous people? Why do we need them to tell us stuff? Why do we take influencers' word on things? Because the spin on this is we're listening to Aaron Rodgers talk about football and life and stuff because he's famous, and he threw out some other names going forward. We're also going to throw out a little bit of Cat Williams in here as well, because Cat Williams did an epic interview on Club Shay Shay on the podcast there, where he called out a whole lot of comedians, which some people said was for truth, but he called out a whole lot of folks because Cat Williams is that guy, and people are listening to it. Why do we listen to these people when they talk about other people? That's where we're going this week. And so that's the headline we're using for the story of the week podcast. Quick step away to talk about sponsorships for the time. And the sponsorship we're highlighting today is Ground News. Ground News is a great platform for folks like you, because you're here because you're into the news and news stories. And you get what we do here at the Conversation Project. We give you news stories from different perspectives. We literally link from different sites and different perspectives, and with different headlines and different things to say, because we want you to see the story and how they're being covered, and you can sort of complain about which one we covered there. If you're looking for reasons to complain less, use Ground News. Ground News is a app that allows you to see all news stories as they're being covered. They search the web for all the different views on a different story. You see, if you're watching the video, we pulled this screen grab from a few weeks ago when they covered Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger was either being covered as an angel or Lucifer's right-hand man, depending on who was doing the coverage on this one. There was very little in between, and so you can see from the actual coverage in their rankings what coverage from the left gave them more positive, what coverage from the right gave them more negative, what coverage was in the middle, and try to stay sort of neutral in that case. They do that for all major news stories and some stories you might not expect out there, including what's going to be really shocking is stories that you're not seeing in your venue, story that your particular brand of newscast is not giving to you because it's either something that's being superly overblown out by one side, or they just don't want to hide it. They don't want to see it. They're hiding it. You can see some stories that are covered exclusively by the right or the left because other folks don't want to talk about it, and see how the coverage is going and see who is covering it how. Check it out at thisisaconversationproject.com ground news. This is a conversationproject.com/ground news. We actually use this link to our affiliate link because it gives us a commission for you getting the app. Install the app, use the app, and use it daily. We use this as part of what we use to aggregate our news stories every single day and help us pick which perspective we're going to put out there for you to engage in. But if you want to see the straight news for yourself and not wait for us to give you something every morning, use Ground News and use our affiliate link so that we get a little bit of assistance. We thank you so much for that one. We also thank you so much for just being a part of the family at The Conversation Project. We live online at thisisaconversationproject.com, where the calls to action are follow the feeds, Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/thisisconversationproject, twitter.com/th_conversation. Go to our website and find where you can get replays and views of all of us in all the things in all the places. Go to our sponsors page and visit more sponsors. Go to our partnerships page and see if you want to partner directly with us to get more things done. Email us anytime you want to at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Let us know how we can improve stuff and all those things. The Conversation Project lives for you, and we don't do this. We can't do this. It's not done without your help. Top 10 stories don't come about unless you give us the stories in your engagement. We didn't just make this up. These are numbers that are there. I can show you spreadsheets. I got numbers. I got receipts. It's all there. And we can't do this without you. We need more help, so more engagement in the feeds. We need more help, so more checking out with sponsors and maybe partnerships. We need more help, so more emails with suggestions. And the thing you can do is basically share the Conversation Project and all our things with other people. Bring more people to the conversation. We have better conversations. Whether you like them, those are the people, or not, or you like the stories we choose or not, everything's worthy of the conversation. It's always team content here for the Conversation Project. We do have opinions, and we'll give you those as we need to. I'll give you my opinion as they come out, but it's all about having something to talk about where we don't go to fisticuffs. And sometimes watching people go to fisticuffs is kind of fun. I'll be honest on that one. But check us out at the Conversation Project, our home online. This is theconversationproject.com. Oh, make sure you check out our daily poll as well. That's helping us choose which stories and which directions to go on things as well. A poll question every single morning, along with the newsletter every single morning at the Conversation Project's website. So, the Almost Rants. This is a group of stories, 5 stories that aren't quite in range. Most of these stories we actually talked about because they were interesting to chat up in the daily show, but we're going to not give them full disclosure going forward. We can just give you the headlines, and you can go click on the links that are in the newsletter or in the description for this video to see more about these stories for the week. On Thursday, the 4th of January, we posted Jonathan Majors sits down for first interview since guilty verdict. He's going to sit down with ABC and sometime in the future, and oddly enough, ABC is owned by Disney, who fired him from Marvel. Is it ironic? Don't you think? Dave Chappelle ends Florida show early, walks off stage. This one we posted on the 30th of December. Just as before this actual new show came out, which was what people were really talking about. But this is something that happened where he just wasn't feeling the crowd. He left the show early, literally killed the show in the middle of it. On the number 13 story, Olympic cyclist Melissa Hoskins run down and killed by car reportedly driven by her Olympic cyclist husband. Posted on Wednesday the 3rd. Check that one out. This one is a really interesting story. May give you conspiracy theory vibes, but it's one you got to kind of read to really get into. Number 14, show your love for Caitlin Clark. The Iowa sensation drains a winner from the logo to cap a 40-point night, historic night for her, then all historic. And this turned into a bunch of actual talk about what's going to happen when she goes to the WNBA, and some people being blasted for basically getting it wrong. This was posted on Wednesday the 3rd as well. Check out this one and show Caitlin Clark some love as we prepare for March Madness in about a month and a half or so. And at number 15, this is a story that we tried our best to stay away from, so we did not cover it live this week, but it's there. It's number 15. You guys were engaged in it and want to know about it. So if you haven't picked up on this one, check out the link in the newsletter. Rays shortstop Wander Franco arrested amid allegations of relationship with minor. And now, the almost relevant story of this week has this headline which reads, Illinois enacts law to legalize fuzzy dice hanging from rearview mirrors. Now, this story posted on January the 1st, because it's the first of the year, it's actually a story about many U.S. states that are doing new laws for the year. And some of them seem kind of weird, some of them seem kind of odd, or some of them are just, that's when they come through. They also kill other things up there. Essentially, new taxes came in, a lot of new laws against pornography and gun control popped in, which we'll talk about throughout the week because they popped in later issues for yesterday and this weekend for some of our things we're posting going forward. And one law in Illinois allows people to hang fuzzy dice from their mirrors again. Why was that an issue? Because fuzzy dice and little tree air fresheners are a distraction. They're actually something that impede your vision. So many places basically banned them all outright. It also becomes something of because of that, a simple something you pull people over for to do other things. We've saw that happen before. So Illinois has allowed the replacement of fuzzy dice. Essentially, this is allowing people to go back to hanging cell phones and things from or cameras from their rear view windows mirrors, so that it is it's less of an issue for them being distracted because it's up high instead of down low. But fuzzy dice are also up high and they're distracting, yada, yada, yada. Many new laws enacted this year, one of them in Illinois being fuzzy dice. You can see how maybe no one really cared for this one, but this is at the very, very bottom. As I said, over 900,000% less engaging in the top story, and you can probably see why. Quick reminder that the Conversation Project is online at thisistheconversationproject.com. And our website, our email address, I should say, is theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Check it out for more details on what we do every day and email us about more details of what you might want us to do every single day. We are listening, we read every single thing, even the bad, nasty ones, trust me. And sometimes there's something to get out of those ones where you're calling me an idiot. Sometimes, I've done this for a while. Sometimes my job is just to listen to you vent and call me an idiot. That happens a lot. In the meantime, our feeds, the most important part about the whole Conversation Project is Facebook and Twitter. On Facebook, it's a Conversation Project. On Twitter, th_conversation. Every 50 minutes or so, we post news headlines, links from various places for you to engage in. We also post links for ads and feeds and promos, so there's a check as well. But it's the engagement of the actual stories that we count. We don't count the other things in there, so you won't have me putting a top 10 story as my book coming out and you guys buying it, which is also awesome. But go to our feeds and see what stories you like. As you're checking your feeds for everybody else, engage, like, love, hate, share. The more engagement you give to a story, the more engagement you give to a link, the better chance we have of talking about it either on the weekday show, things you might have heard, or here at the end of the week where it's purely the stories that you want to talk about, the top 10 stories per your engagement. Monday through Friday, we'll give you the top stories from the past, 30 of the top stories of the weekend, 15 of the top stories from Tuesday through Friday morning. We'll vet that out. So there's 10 stories on Monday and 8 stories on the rest of the week to give you into a digest form of what's good going on. And then, as we said, the top 10 stories for this thing here. Plus, one of those stories becomes the story of the week. That's coming down in a separate feed, separate place. Look for it on the website so you can subscribe to it so it comes down as a podcast. That's audio mostly, but of course we do a YouTube video of that as well. And just engage with us going forward. Look out for TikTok videos and YouTube short videos that are hot takes all the time. And as we engage more stuff, we are there for you. Email us with things you want us to do more of, things you want to do less of, things you want us to try. We'll do what we can throughout the year. 2024 will be a large year for us. We're guaranteeing you we're going to do a lot of big things. So Lord willing, creek don't rise. We're going to make it happen. Stay limber, stay hydrated, stay on task for all the grand things you are here on this planet to do in 2024 and many, many beyonds. Good night. Love you, mean it. We'll see you in another iteration of this thing here coming very, very soon.